Raptors fans, welcome into Raptors Today. We start the show off with a little virtual check-in with our old friend, Amy Audibert, who is now a broadcaster for the Miami Heat. So, Ames, how you doing, girl?
I'm great. It's very strange to hear your voice and then hear another team that I'm on another, you know what I mean? But I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. We miss you here. You were such
Yeah.
an integral part of what we did with the Raptors broadcast, but now you're bringing your expertise and your knowledge to the Heat team, unfortunately playing for the bad guys. So let's talk about it. First and foremost, now that you are an insider for another team, I got to ask, have you been exposed to any information as to why Jimmy Butler approaches his media day hairstyles in the fashion that he does? The world wants to know.
Yeah, so I got to tell you quickly. I saw that maybe about 10 minutes before Twitter did, and I was just like preparing myself for like this. The world will forever be different once emo Jimmy is introduced, and it kind of happened, right? I can't speak for him. I don't know why, but I think one of the things I personally have just grown to love about Jimmy is that he lives for himself. He makes his decisions. He surrounds himself with the people that he trusts, and he doesn't it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks to a certain extent, right? And he came in that day with that look because that's what he was feeling and that's what he wanted to show the world. And it is what it is. And you love it or you don't love it, but that's Jimmy.
Has later revealed to be part of a larger marketing plan, I believe, as he's launching a clothing line. So I'm intrigued to see if we can see you rocking any of that. But let's stick to basketball for a quick second and talk about this Heat team. The exact opposite record for the Toronto Raptors after 20 games. Raptors 9-11, Heat 11-9. Overall thoughts on this group? I know you guys have battled injuries so far.
Yeah, injuries in the road. I mean, we've been on the road for 12 of the first 20. And I think that's maybe the most impressive part is that they come out of it with a winning record and they lose Tyler Hero on November 8th, literally at the beginning of the craziest month in terms of on the road. So for the Heat, I'm not sure how much they're leaning into their record as much as just like getting on the right track and getting healthy. This team's played really good. They've had to at times and they've had to adjust on the fly. With guys in and out of the lineups. And for myself, I think, and everybody else is just, you just hope that you can get the whole collective unit together and healthy because they really do believe in their depth. And I certainly understand why. They've gutted out some tough wins on the road with guys that are maybe coming into the season planning on being in that second unit, having to play big minutes in the starting lineup. And that's kind of been nice. I mean, it's unfortunate and you never want to see anybody hurt, but I think the identity's there. It's just consistently being able to throw it out there every night through all the adjustments all the time. I mean, I think it's been 12 different starting lineups now through 20 games. It's a lot.
All right, we touched on Jimmy Butler earlier, but we got to talk about the leader, the head of the snake when it comes to this Heat team. A frustrated Jimmy Butler after that Pacers game. He's called the team mediocre at times. Let's judge. Well, first off, your assessment of how Jimmy's played, both on court and as a leader for this group that you talked about, kind of a mismatch, slapping together lineups.
Yeah, so Jimmy missed the preseason. He had a dental procedure and he didn't play, and he did have a dental procedure. So the first couple of weeks for the season is much of Jimmy ramping up, getting his legs under him, continuing to get that game pace. Jimmy's a vet. Jimmy understands what an 82 game season looked like. And I think you kind of appreciate that a little bit. And Kyle's the same way in terms of you start the season kind of like getting a feel for everything, the league, your own body, how your team's doing. And you did get a sense of that. Now, obviously, the last 3 or 4 games, Jimmy's went 30 plus because the teams absolutely needed that. When Jimmy goes to line 20 times, which he did in the first Indiana game, that hurt. Like, that can't feel good. That you're getting whacked every time. But that's part of Jimmy's game at times. And so I appreciate the fact that he used the word mediocre. The last thing you want to be doing is when your team doesn't play well, sitting there and saying it's fine. And kind of like setting that tone early for this team. And Jimmy's always leader by example. He is. I mean, he just goes out there and plays. He always believes that the team's going to be better the next day. And he shows up and he goes to work. And so that I think you always appreciate with Jimmy. But again, like when your team's not playing well early, in which they gave up way too many points against Indiana, which most teams do anyways.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I've really come to appreciate about this organization is they don't like to make excuses. This is the way we want to do things. This is the way we're expecting ourselves to do things. And if it doesn't look like that, we're going to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to correct it. All about solutions. So I appreciate his voice and tone.
You mentioned the GOAT, Kyle Lowry. A lot of people have written this guy off, but as of right now, he's probably the best catch and shoot three-point shooter in the NBA, according to the numbers. Talk about his resurgence and what he's found after, we'll say it, a down season with the Miami Heat.
well, a fantastic, I think, February on when he got back, right? He had to take a lot of time off. So I'm putting this on record again. He's the GOAT. Okay. I am just so tired of having these conversations with people. Kyle last season at one point was like, I think top 5 in the league in minutes per game, because again, Miami had really came out of the gate with some injuries, and Kyle was playing way too many minutes because the team needed it, which basically resulted in having to take a month off in February to get his knee right. But when Kyle came back, his value to the Miami Heat during a historic playoff run is something that you can't look on a box score and read, and everybody knows it. And we all know this, like, and even with the Raptors, Kyle, we can talk about his points, we can talk about his charges that he takes, his big shots, his assists, we can talk about all that stuff. And of course it matters. But Kyle's biggest impact is locker room, and it's on the court. And it's the way that he can get the team into offense. It's the way he can calm things down. And Kyle, in my opinion, is continuing to do that. He's come back in incredible shape, once again playing right around 30 minutes and consistently out there battling with the team. And then we talk about his tree. We've seen it with Fred. We've seen it here in Miami with Gabe Vincent. And now we're seeing it again. He's just such a locker room and trying to pour into everybody else and make them better too. He's such a stabilizer. And I consider myself very lucky. I actually, when I did a project with him about a month ago, and I was like, I've been following you for like literally following you everywhere, it feels like. And I think I'm lucky to do that because it's the same old Kyle. Like, he's going to be tough. He's an outstanding rebounder. I mean, he gets in there and he's so physical. And I love watching Kyle play when he's at his height.
All right, so let's talk about the young guy, Jaime Jaquez Jr. Definitely showing out. Wasn't projected to be as impactful as he's been to a lot of NBA passerbys. So talk to me about what you've learned from this young man.
So he's a great example of when we talk about drafting players now, and I understand why, but we often talk about ceilings and potential. Jaime Jaquez Jr. is a guy that the Miami Heat said he's a great fit for us, and he's a 4-year college player, and he's mature, and all these wonderful things that we've kind of forgotten about because, again, we want to go after the sexy basketball player, the like what's attractive and the length and the way you can move. And I totally understand that. I'm not against that. But with Jaime, it was this guy is going to be ready right now. That being said, and I don't want to speak for the staff because he certainly had a great training camp. You saw a lot of like smiles and excitement when they were talking about Jaime and what they got in a training camp. They literally got the perfect fit for the Miami Heat in terms of a guy that, number one, again, he's his maturity because his time at UCLA, the Final Fours, huge games, huge crowds. He's played in all those. But then his skill set, his feet are immaculate. His defensive footwork, his offensive footwork. But what I've seen and what we've all seen now in the last month or so is this guy who's literally been guarding every star in the NBA at some point. And I'm talking about Jason Tate. Like, I'm talking about the stars in this league, getting out there and defending them. But now he's the only guy that's played every game, all 20 for the Miami Heat, but he's closing games. Like, he's being trusted out there and he's making plays with Bam and with Jimmy and with the stars of our team. And he's just come into this role. When you look at his college numbers versus his NBA numbers, it's crazy to think. You always hear bigger, faster, stronger when you get to the league, and there's certainly an adjustment there. With Jaime, it's like he's just embraced everything, and it's all the little things. I mean, his fit and the way that he's able to make reads around stars, in my opinion, has just been absolutely remarkable.
All right, let's quickly get a thought on Duncan Robinson, who, again, I mentioned Kyle had a down year, but the real story was Dunk going into single digits, really only played 42 games last year, and now he's kind of refining that form from their long stretch a couple years back going to the finals.
Yeah, so Duncan's another guy. Again, he hurt his hand last year, his shooting hand, in the middle of the year. But the biggest story with Duncan, and I think he's kind of getting tired of hearing about it, he's one of the best shooters in the history of the Miami Heat organization. But really, I'd say I'd put him toe to toe with any shooter in the planet right now. He's 6'7". People forget how he can extend over a lot of defenders, and that's part of his bread and butter. But Duncan spent so much time in the offseason playing two on two, which has forced him to become a better defender, but it's also forced him to put the ball on the ground a lot. So now you're seeing him like just beat guys off the bounce and take it to the rack and finishing hard and pulling up in mid-range. And so his whole offensive package has grown so much. But Duncan started off the season, the preseason, talking about how he's at his best when he has mental clarity and he feels like he's playing free. And that's what we're seeing. Like, he has the green light because he certainly earned it, but it's just the diversity in which he can score now, in which he's confident score, and his teammates obviously want him to shoot whenever he's open, but he's also now is able to create his own shot off the bounce. And I'm really happy for him because it's I can't imagine it would be nice waking up every day and being told how you're being overpaid, or that you're not making shots and all
I
this
wish I
stuff.
had that problem.
Right, but you know what? He got in the gym, and he just got in the gym, continued to work, and he's playing and scoring at such a high level. It's going to be interesting when Tyler gets back to see where Duncan's role fits in. But he's looking great right now. And again, it's a positive problem when we talk about the depth of what this team could be when they're healthy.
All right, so Raptors, Heat, Wednesday night. What are your keys for the game? I guess you're coming from the other side with Miami, but take into consideration what the Raptors have kind of been battling with, especially the three-point lines, not been kind to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Miami, again, coming off a really tough loss to Indiana, where they gave up 144 points, I believe was the number. Miami's going to snap back into a defensive mentality. It has to be. Again, that's their identity. They've been scoring better than they did last season, but it always starts on the defensive end for Miami. So I imagine them really trying to pick up the intensity and the execution on that end of the court. And Miami, again, just touching the paint on offense is such a big deal. I mean, everyone knows Bam did not make the trip. That was public. That's no secret. And Bam's such an important part of the Miami Heat offense as well. They put him in the middle and run through him. So being able to find ways to still touch the paint and engage a defense is going to be important. And I know Toronto, obviously, I know more than anybody how great that home crowd is, how tough it is to go in there and win. But I think that Miami's confident in that they've spent so much of the early season on the road that they're going to have to be able to execute that on the road again.
All right. Well, Miami Heat broadcaster Amy Audibert, we thank you for your time. And please take care of yourself. We hope to see you in the city soon. We know you won't be there Wednesday, but we wish you the best of luck with the rest of your season.